panel is now all about companies and what they've done so far and how they see the future, both for their own organizations as well as for others, and collaboration, the potential to come together, learn from one another, and potentially even work towards the same CSR objectives. We've got a fabulously experienced panel over here, and I won't go over their bios in detail because they are on these speaker sheets, but I'll just summarize by saying that all three of these individuals have not only immense experience in the private sector and in finance, but also in working on CSR for their organizations. Vidya Shah on my extreme left heads the Edelgive Foundation, which is Edelgive CSR arm. Vidya has been a career investment banker and then moved to the foundation, where she's in charge of setting their strategy, direction, as well as achieving their development goals. Edelgive has a really interesting model around co-funding, where they partner with other corporates to fund similar projects and the same sort of objectives. And they also have a very interesting way of working with their grantee partners on capacity building, monitoring and reporting, which I will have Vidya explain a little later. Thank you for joining us, Vidya. Seated next to Vidya and bringing gender balance to this panel is Ram from DSP BlackRock. Ram is Chief Administrative Officer at DSP BlackRock and has been very closely involved with their CSR. He's on the CSR committee and has sort of been instrumental in setting their CSR policy and direction for the year. Thank you, Ram, for joining us. And then last but not the least is seated right next to me is Beenoxi Arora, who's the head of programs at the Axis Bank Foundation. Beenoxi basically oversees Axis Bank's 42 programs in the livelihood space, and has also been, in the banking sector previously. Thank you for joining us, Beenoxi. And what we can hear more about from her is the famous due diligence process that Raj talked to us about this morning. So I'm sure you could share that with everyone in the room, and and we can have some good takeaways there. So I'll jump right in. We'll have a bit of a discussion between us for about half an hour to 40 minutes, and then we'll open it out to Q&A. So in this new environment, really, CSR, how companies set their policies, strategies, etc., has gotten a lot of attention. There's been a lot of questions. We at Dastra, for example, have heard a lot of companies pick up the phone and say, but how do we do this and how do we choose what to do? The problems are so vast. There are so many NGOs that come to us. So we have to do it, but sure, how do we get there? How do we develop a vision? Now, all of your organizations have been doing CSR well before this law actually came into place, and have been very sort of, involved in, in the challenges that India faces and trying to alleviate them. Can you, each of us will, we'll go one by one. Can each of us talk, can each of you talk us through how you set that vision? What was the thinking when you decided to take on CSR? And why did you choose to focus on certain sectors? Beenoxi, do you want to start?
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. For Axis Bank, it started in a very small way. Axis Bank had completed about 10 years of operations. We were just moving from the image of a small-sized bank to a slightly medium-sized bank. We had a good number of customers. We had good profits earned. We had built a brand image. And so I think it was in the 10th year anniversary function when this thing was, incubated, when the thought came in that we as a bank have got from the society, so how about giving back to society? How can we do it? What is the milestone? What is the method? And that's when it was decided that we should have CSR as a separate activity within the bank. We should give back to the bank. And from there on, the whole vision as such evolved over the years. We had programs in small ways. We had some learnings. We made our own mistakes. we tweaked our programs. We realized that we need to harness energy from around 40,000 plus employees in Axis Bank. How should we go about doing it? And over the years, as we evolved our thinking and our vision, we thought that now is the time. We took this opportunity of the Companies Act making it mandatory that let us have a vision statement for ourselves. So we went around meeting and engaging with our stakeholders, our employees, the foundation people, the top management team, the board of Axis Bank Foundation trustees. And that's when we thought that, we should have everyone talking the same language. And then we decided on about 3 areas. One is building factors responsible for creating sustainable livelihoods, because that was the focus area which we had decided. So we thought that enablers, creating enablers for the livelihoods should be one aspect. Then we thought we should also make sure that we excel in project management. As a banker, it comes quite a bit naturally to us that we deal with money, with lending patterns. So it's in the normal course of business that utilization is quite critical. So we said we must excel in project management. And with this, our vision is to be one of the reputed brands in the corporate foundation sector. So these are a 3-point vision for the bank.
Great. Ram, could you tell us a bit about DSP CSR?
Sure. I think for us, good afternoon. I think for us, it naturally flows from our stakeholders, right? Both BlackRock as well as the Kotaris. They've been into philanthropy for a long time, and so that's naturally flown to us. So as an organization, I mean, we are basically we are an investment management company, not a big conglomerate, so to speak, in terms of having our own foundation. So pretty much the activities we started off in a very low scale about 7-8 years back, like-minded employees who were otherwise also involved personally in CSR activities. We thought, more again as an employee engagement activity, and more so to also do our bit, extend our responsibility beyond the core stakeholders into social sectors. We thought, we should begin somewhere. So we began, and of course it was a very low budget at that point in time, and it has evolved over a period of last 7 years. So initially we used to sort of cut checks, support activities around like midday meal schemes, or support orphanage in terms of books and other things. So it was all like cutting checks, but somewhere down the line we thought we have to do something which is far more sustainable, and so whatever may be the budget, let's try and create a maximum impact out of that. So that's when I think of course we came in touch with Dasra, and that whole idea of how can you be a catalyst, with a meager budget that you have, how can you indirectly also create an impact for a larger set of people, larger community, and that was the thought process, and that really worked well for us. For example, we started supporting workshops which are aimed at helping the NGOs build their scale, build their skills, so they are then able to go and showcase to other funders and get more funding. And so we thought, with this budget, how can I create more impact, is by doing all of these things rather than cutting checks to some 5-10 different organizations, which is just not sustainable. So that's how, and of course now we have a very formal, then of course the issue was what sectors to look at. So we did evaluate, and at the end of everything, I think the consensus within, and we have a committee, a CSR committee, which is the Gives committee. So there was a consensus there that if you look at your options are, look at health, look at old age, and look at the children. So obviously children, as we all I'm sure we all agree, they're the futures of any nation. So we said, why not look at that as a sector, focus there, and even within children, why not focus on underprivileged, and we wanted to be as focused as possible. So even within that, we said, okay, you could do underprivileged girl children, adolescent girls. So what we have done is, with the kind of budget that we have now, we are focusing all our energies on that niche sector, which is basically children, and within children look at their education, because as we all know, I think there's some statistics which say that not more than 50% of the kids actually go beyond primary, and ultimately only about 20% of the kids actually go into colleges. So with those things, we said, why not look at education as one part, try to support children education, and of course the girl empowerment. So these are the two focus areas as far as we are concerned, and we try to do it indirectly by helping NGOs, helping them to scale up, helping them to build sustainable models, so that in turn, then they can sort of get their funding and they can have a far accelerated impact, much more than what they would have otherwise done. So that's a focus, key focus area.
Thank you, Rama.
I think when I look back to when we started Edelgive, the frameworks that we've seen is, and that's why there's been a lot of struggle today after the bills been enacted, because the two models that most corporates followed were either charity or sustainability. So most of the work that they ended up doing was either writing checks, like he just said, and what we also did pre 2006, or it's sustainability, which is where you identify a key group of stakeholders and then do a few things to manage the environment around important stakeholders. I think the approach that we took in 2006, after we'd sort of done writing checks, was that we felt that we had certain skills and expertise and certain experiences that we could bring to the social sector and impact it more positively and more strategically, as opposed to saying that let's limit our role to funding. And the reason we did that is because as we started looking at some of the organizations that we just funded, we found that there was an equal and possibly greater need around building their capacities, and that's where they were struggling, and that's where there was almost a complete apathy from all sorts of donors. And so we felt that as a corporate who had worked with young entrepreneurs on the for-profit side and actually helped them grow, we felt that we could really translate those experiences and those skills to the not-for-profit world, and sort of create a social sector that's sort of more enriched and then becomes more powerful in its own right. But the second thing we also ended up doing is not just look external, but also look internal and say, what will this foundation do to Edelweiss? And as a corporate, what can we do differently so that it does not become just an activity that is conducted by a few people, but also becomes very integral and sort of germane to who we are as Edelweiss. And therefore, the second thing we ended up doing is figuring out how to engage Edelweiss, and that sort of led to the natural progression of getting our employees involved by executing the capacity building work that we wanted to do in the first place. And so today we have a culture where it is not just a CSR or a philanthropy part of our work, but it's something that all of Edelweiss engages in by actively working on the projects that we fund.
Great. Thank you for sharing how you have set up your foundations and CSR work. One thing that came out in common was, specifically between what Ram and Vidya was saying, was this notion of capacity building, and Vidya touched upon, the role of employees of a company in bringing these capacity building skills, to organizations you're supporting. But the other thing that requires is really getting buy-in internally for the type of work you're doing with CSR, and being, and having the CSR being perceived as an integral part of the company and not something that is just done on the side to give back. So it would be interesting to hear, from Ram and Beenoxi also, if there are employees at your companies getting involved in a very hands-on way. What do those, what does that look like? And then, for all of you, how did you create this buy-in? Not everyone might care about livelihoods. Not everyone might care about the girl child. Some employees might be more passionate about different causes. So how do you rally an entire organization around a cause and really move their energies towards that? Um, anyone can start.
Okay, so we have a few employee engagement events in the categories of, wherein various kinds of events, wherein either the NGO partners with our branches, because we have a wide network of branches. We also make sure that about 75 to 80% of the places where we are in, we are mapped to our branches where they are there. So that's the starting point in terms of a policy, that we are alongside in the site locations where our programs are running. We do events, we invite them to the office. We have functions wherein the employees go there and spend a day in doing it. We are also considering officiating officials on a formal basis by going there for a week or 15 days or even 3 months for the interested candidates, and actually sitting and working there in the field. We've got options wherein we could have a fellow program with some academic institutions for interested officers. So this is the method. In addition to this, we have a lot of other engagements wherein we have NGO exhibitions at our counters. We invite NGOs to come and display their products which are made by their SHG groups, and that is open to all our branches, that's open to our customers, that's open to internal people. We don't charge them for this. They get an opportunity to meet a lot of people. A lot of officers from there interact with the NGO people, and then the volunteering starts. We also have a project recording for the visually impaired, wherein we record academic syllabuses for them, and those are converted into textbooks, storybooks, etc. So this is the method wherein we have engagement in our own way. But yes, there is a lot of scope to really touch the thousands of employees across the bank.
So far, what has been the response been like?
Yeah, the response each time is very encouraging. There are a lot of people coming and asking us after every event that we want to spend time, we want to go, and wherever possible, geographically close by, we link them to our existing NGOs or even NGOs who are not our partners, and link them for a weekend work or for this. We also have our management trainees doing a rural immersion program for 15 days every year. So they also get a taste of what it is there to be like. And they also come back with all their stories, and this is how the engagement currently goes on.
Ram, I know at DSP there's employees that give to similar organizations that the company is supporting. So for example, with
exactly.
Sahara.
I think for us, I think you had two questions. One was the internal buy-in. I think that certainly was not a challenge for us at all, because it was in the DNA of the stakeholders, DNA of senior management. So we didn't really have, the committee didn't have any challenges at all in getting the buy-in of the management or the stakeholders. So that was pretty easy for us. But yes, we do have a challenge in terms of, because we are spread across 39 cities, right? And so to that extent, we have a challenge in engaging employees, and there are ways in which we do it. One is, of course, we do solicit from all the employees, irrespective of which location the employee is based out of. We do encourage them to give us suggestions in terms of are there any sort of projects in the nearby location or anything that we could support. That's one. Two is, whenever it comes to any calamities that we support, because that's also when we do, like for example, when we looked at the Uttarakhand relief, the north team across, we have about 6 branches in north, so all of them, they pool their resources, and all the on the ground logistics were all managed by them. So that's another. Third is, we also run matching donation, so that we run every year a matching donation where employees are encouraged to match our contribution. We match the contributions made by the employees. So then that's and pretty much we have a very transparent process in terms of identifying the NGOs that we will be supporting with the matching with the matching contributions. So these are several ways, and of course we do have, as Beenoxi said, the Diwali events or the Christmas events where we do invite. There's a project that we support of the girl children of sex workers who are sort of put into a very very normal kind of a household environment. You know, that's a project which is run by one of the NGOs. You know, the kids go to a normal convent school, there is tutor coming in, they lead a very normal life. The idea is to basically give them a very normal life away from the environment that they were otherwise in. So those kids come and obviously engage with the employees out there. So these are several ways, but yes, we do have because of the size and because that we are spread across, and these are the small ways in which we try to sort of engage our employees. And apart from that, there is a monthly update, a newsletter update which goes to all the employees about the project that I spoke about, the developments out there. So it just and as I said, it's a very open committee, and we keep soliciting suggestions from employees irrespective of where they are based.
Vidya, any
I think the challenge always that a lot of corporates face with employee engagement is, you know, one, for us at least, it had to be pro bono. Second, it had to be over and above what they did, you know, at their day jobs. And third, it could not be linked to any reward system. You know, there's absolutely no way that we would, you know, compensate anybody differently or even recognize anybody differently for the work they did. So that's always a challenge for a lot of corporates, and that's the reason why you don't. So the idea is then to sort of appeal to an alternate, you know, part of their makeup, and that's to say that there is a different world here that most of us are not exposed to, and take them into a sort of a very gentle immersion. So we struggled in the first 3 years, and the struggle was largely to figure out what would really appeal to our employees, and we found that there were actually a number of things. There were different things, and we had to be able to do all of them. So yes, we do have a payroll giving program because a lot of people find that the easiest, simplest way of engaging. But I think what we were trying to do is to do things that enable them to engage more deeply, and that was, we then created field visits, which was our way of immersing them into the work, as actually go out and see the world, and that actually sort of captures the imagination and interest of a lot of people, because most of us haven't seen you know, the work of NGOs. Then we found that there was a whole set of people who wanted to volunteer directly, and that's what really, you know, they felt engaged with, which is either teaching, lot of mentoring, career counseling, you know, things like that. And so we have all sorts of programs that run parallelly every year that are just focused on that. And then obviously things, the part that's really closest to us, which is the capacity building part, which means you know, structured engagement, reasonably well defined time, reasonably well defined and structured projects, but those also need a lot of buy-in from NGOs themselves, and to create that partnership environment. So we've, you know, created these offerings. We've over the last 6 years managed to institutionalize, processize a lot of it, and that enables us to roll it out fairly rapidly, and we have set calendars, and that's the reason why we have about 25% of our employees engage with us year on year.
That's incredible. We heard in the morning specifically from the NGO panel that, you know, structuring employee engagement is something that will be critical moving forward, you know, not leaving it to the NGO to manage the volunteer. So, you know, I'm sure that there's a lot we can take away from your experience there. I'm going to ask each one of you a specific question now, you know, that sort of relates more to your own foundations. You know, starting with Beenoxi, can you share this famous due diligence process with us? Raj said that it prepared him for the world and prepared Lend a Hand India for working with corporates. And it's something that the Axis Bank Foundation is actually very well known for, is the rigor with which they do due diligence. So can you walk us through what you do?
So we do have an elaborate process. It wasn't very difficult for us to set this, because we do that in the normal course, as I said, for all our project management programs. And we were internal bankers who kept moving to various departments, so CSR was one of them. So we just replicated the whole banking model into this in a small way. So we start by identification of the partners. We do that. We have a small method, a research method internal, so which we do. We have a data bank which is taken from consultants. Forums like this where we meet people, we take references. Forums like Dasra, Give India, TIS also has a lot of partner names with them. So having identified them, we would go, we'll visit them, meet the top management team, meet the entire team over there, see a couple of their site locations as to how the work is going on. The documentation of balance sheet, etc. is obviously being done in the back end. After our visit is through, we will also have a second round of a third party pre-assessment audit being done. Only someone, Tapan is here. Oh, he's not here. Tapan also met me in the afternoon. He was talking about the audit. So a pre-assessment audit is where we actually get to know about the systems, the processes, what are the policies of the organization, how is there strength to go to scale up the programs, to go deep further, to sustain for 5 years, 7 years the support, and all that entire audit piece is done. After the audit, it doesn't stop there. We wait till the partner has been able to comply with all those audit requirements. In turn, it's a capacity building exercise for them, and most of them are very happy about it because there are so many things would not have known required to be done, and it makes it easier for them to just replicate this when they approach another funder. So there's this pre-assessment audit happening. After the pre-assessment audit is cleared, they give us a detailed grant proposal. We have about 45 to 50 questions in that detailed grant proposal, which is filled up and given to us. We have an internal rating based on that grant application. We do an internal rating tool which we've developed. So there is a ABC kind of a scoring which comes internally, which prepares us how what is our comfort level partnering with the NGO. Along with that, we also do a ref check about the partner NGOs with other donors who are present over there, either through the government organizations or existing private donors. Thereafter, the entire proposal is taken up to our board of trustees. So there's a board of trustees. We have an eminent board, Mr. Ramamoorthy from TCS, Vice Chairman TCS, he's there. Ms. Anu Aga from Thermax, she is on our board. We have an independent member, Mrs. Sheila Patel. So it is these kind of people who actually go through the entire NGO's project, and they will have their own inputs. So those again get inculcated into the proposal. And once the proposal is cleared, then we have a detailed sanction letter, terms and conditions like a credit, lending process. These are the terms and conditions which will have to be complied with. We also have a memorandum of understanding which is signed between the partner and Axis Bank Foundation. Thereafter, the disbursements start, and we do not disburse it in one lot. Obviously, it is deferred. It's either about quarterly or it is half yearly, depending on the type of project. And the disbursements are also linked to certain milestones being achieved. The target versus achievement is what is checked. After the first disbursement happens, it could be less than 30 days wherein we are running after them for a report. What's happened? So initially it could be an issue, yeah. So initially it can be an issue, but later on, it gets into the process wherein you know what is happening over there monthly, and it also creates a reason to do new things in terms of reporting. So we have monthly reportings, we have quantitative reportings, we have financial reportings, we have narrative reportings of what is happening in the program. We also have reconciliation of grants happening whenever our visits are there. Coming to visits, we have quarterly visits that we do to each of our NGO partners at different site locations wherever our programs are running. We have annual financial audits through a third party who goes there and does an audit, like a program audit, a program review, and the audit will have to be closed within 60 days. That's the internal time frame we have for ourselves. There's an audit report, the irregularities or observations go to the partner, those are replied, and then we have a process where we close an audit report and an audit file. Wow. We also have a social impact audit happening, which is like your midterm impact assessment and an end-term impact assessment. So in a project of 5 years, we have this happening at least twice. We have annual reviews. So although the program is there for 5 years, there is an annual review happening about the program, about your target versus achievement every year. And as though this was not enough, this year we've introduced 3 more things.
Oh wow!
That is internally
Have you
for us.
tripled your team?
No, not yet. We are also tracking our NGO, the news of our NGO partners through an outsourced media agencies, and media agency related news, adverse news or positive news. So we track those so that we are well aware about what is happening with the partners. We've also developed a partners grant manual so that it makes it more easy for them to comply with the instructions. You know, we observed through our audit processes that at the end of the year we would say, oh, this is not in place, or this would be better, etc. Instead of that, we thought, let us have a set of guidelines which would make it easier for them to comply from day one. So that is what we have. We are also conducting some research papers to see whether the impact of our programs is in line with what the sector outputs are. And we are also doing some satisfaction surveys to take feedback from the partners as to what works.
That's incredible. How large is your team?
We are 13.
13. And how much? So, and I'm guessing there's a lot of support you have to give to your partners to be able to fill up all of these forms or comply with this. That's incredible. So it is doable. Okay, Ram, I think it'd be interesting to hear specifically about DSP BlackRock's areas of focus. It's quite unique, I think, for an investment company to be looking at causes such as the girl child, which is typically not something we've seen a lot of. We haven't seen much of corporate India really take a stance, specifically on that issue. So can you tell us how you came to, I'm saying this because obviously I've read your CSR policy, but can you explain a bit about the 3 areas of focus in there and why those came up?
Yeah, as I said, initially we did look at several sectors that were in front of us, and finally narrowed down, because children, as I said, we wanted to create a strong foundation for this country, so that could only be achieved by encouraging children, investing in children, taking care of their education, their health, and so on and so forth. So they then turn to grow into productive adults, and they can add to our sort of the productivity of this country. That is one. And secondly, I think we also firmly believe that at the end of the day, women empower a nation's health to a great extent, and the nation's future also depends on the empowerment of women in the country. So it's very, very important at the end of the day to empower, to have empowered women in this country. And given the history of this country, how can you do that is by working at a very early age. So you start working with when the girls are their adolescent age, and then work with them, give them a good kind of an environment, look at the kind of issues that are affecting them, and try to do your bit in terms of, as I said, we are working more like catalysts, in trying to get NGOs to work around those kind of issues, and also help NGOs build scale in those kind of sectors. So it was basically, as I said, more a consensus kind of a decision for us to focus on children, and especially on girl children. The other issues, and again within children, one is of course education. The other area where we also would like to focus on is on the vocation, because once you do your basic education, the next stage is of course to be productive. So obviously we would like to imbibe vocational skills in the adults, and so that's an area where we would sort of also work. And so the way we have structured our policy is, again, we've tried to keep it a little flexible. 80% of our budget actually is focused on children, and within children, as I said, on education and vocational skill development. 20% is something which we have kept it open, of course, to take care of the kind of support that we do in the event of natural calamities or any other cause that we would like to sort of support. So that's how we have structured. And the third bit that we also, given that Hemanta Kothari is sort of very passionately involved, wildlife and environment conservation is also an area where we 25% of our budget is actually allocated to that. So you then create a country with a much more cleaner environment and a rich wild reserve. So that's broadly the kind of policy that we have. And Gayatri, I also wanted to just add to maybe respond to the earlier question that you made. See, as far as mid-sized corporates are concerned, one of the big things is given the kind of the budgets that we work with, and it's very important to maximize the impact. So one is, so that's where, I mean, at the end of the day, if you have to really look at how do you monitor the activities, how do you identify NGOs, and how do you basically run your CSR activities, that's where the question of insourcing versus outsourcing, like Beenoxi said, it's a 13-member team insourcing. If mid-sized corporates, obviously given the budgets, if we have to set up infrastructure in terms of people, primary, secondary, when you talk of people, it's like backup. You talk of infrastructure, that could be pretty large cost, and that can eat away a big chunk or big share of your actual the budget that you have set out for yourself. So what we tend to do, I mean, typically I would think any mid-sized corporate should ideally look at is then look at some external experts, external research firms to actually and leverage on the kind of research that's already being done. There are plenty of research available, there are plenty of organizations. Arora is a very classic living example here, where you can actually leverage. There's already a cost which is spent, so we would sort of look at leveraging out of those research reports and then trying to identify issues, and then even in terms of sort of monitoring and in terms of the monitoring the NGOs and all the other things, we would actually look at looking at an external firm doing that for us, where we can actually run it on a very optimal kind of a cost model.
That's great. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a great point. Vidya, I've been talking for the past I don't know how many years to everyone I've met about how Edelgive has this ability to work with its grantee partners, and not just work with them as organizations, but work with their funders, get all of the reporting requirements across funders aligned, and actually get buy-in from a group of funders that, okay, we'll use the same format. And it does seem, today and generally that this issue of monitoring and reporting, actually getting information back on time, is a pain point when we're doing CSR. And so, I've used this as an example countless times, and I think it'd be good for the group to hear, how did you come up with this? How do you align these funders? How does that build the capacity of the organization?
I think having worked now for about 6 years in this fashion, I think we're very clear that there has to be a much greater level of collaboration in the sector. I think even Dasra's work has been largely around building those collaborative frameworks, and the collaboration does not necessarily have to be between non-profits on the one side and funders on the other, but among non-profits, funders, catalytic organizations like Dasra, and a lot of other people who are working, as well as the huge employee workforce that we have who can bring very specific skills. And then when we started working around capacity building, we figured that there were 4 pillars that we wanted to work around: strategy and planning, systems, processes, technology, HR, and fundraising and sustainability, which was a huge issue for a lot of our non-profits. And the pain point was not simply in terms of in terms of working with a group of funders, but also creating that diversity of funders, because you have to move away from the same group of funders in order to be sustainable. And one of the things we then came across, I remember Magic Bus recently at a forum said that they had to report on some obscene number of indicators every month, something like 200 indicators in aggregate among all the funders that they were working with, and it was not just the time it took, It was the fact that you had to sit and measure and collect data, and you had to have a team that could actually make sense of what they were measuring, and nobody knew whether they were measuring the right thing at the end of it. So this we find is a huge, huge problem, and I think there needs to be one or two donors for almost every non-profit that's sitting and working strategically with the non-profit to figure one, what is being measured, and then trying to integrate among the different funders as to what is being measured and convincing other donors. And I think as donors we have that position that we can adopt. We have that power in a sense to bring together funders and to say that this actually makes sense, because most funders come from a mindset of saying measurement is important, but we never really question what is being measured. We have our own individual formats, and we're not really fitting those formats to the work of the non-profit. So yes, it's a bit of an evangelistic role that you have to play. It takes a lot of dialogue. It takes time, because you have to build that comfort and relationship with donors, but it can be done. It can be done.
Great. With that, I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions and answers. Anyone, just put your hand up, introduce yourself very briefly, and Aditi, can we have a mic, please?
Hi everyone.
Yeah.
Is it on?
Yeah.
My name is Aditi Kothari, and I'm with the DSP BlackRock CSR committee. And Ram has made some really relevant points, and I have a few questions for the panel, but I also wanted Ram to elaborate a little more on a certain things that would, I think, help people to understand our experience even better. So Ram, I was just thinking that can we talk a little more about the whole Andale experience that we had, and how then we got them into DSI, and what the do's and don'ts we've learned from that, because I think that's important for everyone. Like, it's a case in point. And I also want to add that what Axis Bank, what you guys are doing is great. It's amazing, but as Ram said, it's really tough for us to be able to do something. I was just like, oh my God, because we don't even have a designated CSR person. We all have different roles. And we just come together as a committee when we have sort of, as Ram said, a mid-sized company. Though after the CSR law, our budgets have gone up fourfold. So it's not something small that we can just ignore anymore. We have to put some thought behind it. And so therefore, I think outsourcing for us has really, really helped. And thinking about it through outsourcing, because there's no way I can go to my CEO and say, can I hire one more person just for CSR? He will freak out if I said things like that. So I think we have to just work with the systems. So I think that's a big learning that we've had. And also, if I can, I may be ignorant, but I'm thinking Edelgive does have, whoever you probably have it on your website, right?
Yes.
Sort of your suggested organizations, which is another way that I think we all can benefit from, since you've already done your due diligence and work specifically on capacity building on those organizations, right? And similarly, would you all have it on the website? You don't. But if you can put it, that'd be real, because you have such rigorous procedures. I think that everyone would be so happy to learn where you are funded, because then for all of us, it would just we just have to piggyback on you. I feel, it's because we all don't have those sort of, we don't have those resources in-house. But Ram, if I can just come back to you and speak a bit about that, because in the beginning I was like, what are we doing here when I first came to the CSR committee? Because we didn't have a plan. And just actually before that, I also wanted to add one more thing that Ram said, is that we did decide areas that we wanted to focus on, but what's really helped us is say January every year, when we know roughly what our budget for CSR is going to be for the year, we actually sit down and we say this much in this area, this much in this area, this much in this area, and then we actually try to make a budget from that. And so that we know we're not going to spread ourselves too thin. So then if you have people that keep coming to you for education, and then you end up giving 80% of your money there, and you're like, oh my God, okay, 20% is only left, and I also wanted to fund livelihoods, and I also wanted to fund you know, conservation or whatever it is. So from the beginning, if we earmark it and we decide the buckets and then we look for NGOs in those areas, I think it's just sort of a discipline for everyone. But Ram, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, sure. This project that I was talking about, where we started about 5 years back, this is an organization which runs, as I said, a house for kids of, the girl children of sex workers, put them into a convent. It was like a project which, we thought it's very unique. Of course, if you look at the cost base of such project, it's not going to be like a shelter home, or because here we are actually talking of giving a very normal kind of a family environment to kids and putting them in a proper school and with tutors and with extracurricular and so on and so forth. So we engaged with this NGO, and we were sort of actively working with them. But what we realized is, and as I think Vidya also touched upon, is at the end of the day you need to have an exit point, right? You need to have a point where this becomes, for the project becomes self-sustaining. They are able to attract more donors. Their dependency on us, and at the same time, even for us, we also would at some point like to diversify, by having more number of NGOs that we support. So at that point of time, it was a little bit of concentration risk for us as well. So at that point of time, what we thought was, how do we then enable them to scale themselves, right? To prepare them to face other funders, and someone can sort of look at institutionalize this process, and we put them through the DSI, the Social Impact Program, and which at the end of when they went through the whole program, at the end of it, we could see a great change in them in terms of one is, of course, just enabled them to look at things from scratch, including the kind of, do you have a second line, do you have well written policies and procedures, and so on and so forth, and at the end of the day, how do you measure your impact? So it helped them a lot, and what really happened after that was they were actually able to, and of course the Shah also worked along with them in terms of sprucing up their marketing and brochures and literatures and other things, and also prepared them to sort of make presentations and do the kind of pitch. So they were, post that, 2 or 3 things happened. One is, of course, they were able to get funding from a couple of HNIs. That was one. And second most important thing which happened was they actually got enrolled into one of the US platforms, where into which they now have a sort of a regular stream of funding that comes in. Of course, this is like more like our Give India Foundation. There's a one in the US. So slowly and steadily now, what this is, we have set a path. At some point of time, we have to decide on an exit time where their dependence on us, and they'll have more organizations funding the project, and then we could then sort of look at diversify ourselves and move to other NGOs. So I think that's what we did with them. And the second thing, of course, is also in terms of monitoring. As Aditi said, we are all full-time employees, and of course work on the CSR committee, but you need someone who can go on the ground and look at what they are doing, and that's where we've sort of take external help to make sure that things are in terms of governance, in terms of in terms of even the objectives that they are sort of chasing, whether they are able to meet those kind of objectives or not. We take sort of the trust help to even monitor their activities. So that gives internally a lot of comfort to us to say that yes, there is an impact which is getting created, and second is, it gives us also in terms of visibility for us also to slowly start moving out of that project, and this gradually sort of disengage ourselves from them over a period of time.
I just want to add one more thing. One thing also that we learned is that when we did our budgets, we said that we were going to earmark when they were smaller. They're going to be bigger now because of the CSR rules. But when they were smaller, we said instead of funding organizations with our budget, because we saw that we had to spread ourselves very thin. we decided that we were going to, from what Vidya calls capacity building, so similarly that we're going to teach them how to fish for themselves versus feeding them directly. And that's again what we outsourced then to Dasra. But we realized, as we've seen in this case study with Andale, is that what a difference it made with just teaching them how to do it themselves versus us constantly feeding them. It's made a much bigger impact in every way to this organization.
I just add one point here. This issue which we took up about exiting a program, we must try and have an exit strategy as such in our policy making, that which kind of programs, after how many years, after how much support over a period of time you should have. Having said that, we have not been able to still have an exit strategy for the reason that most of these NGOs sometimes are small, they're doing really good work, but they do not have the capacity to actually go around meeting many other corporate social people. So, the program rolls over 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and, at the end of 7 years, you still have them saying, please, another couple of years. So, that's when we thought that our networking is probably a little more than theirs. Now that everyone will have a set of 5-7 NGOs that will go ahead and do at least for a start as corporate, with our network we should also interchange and give references of our existing good partners to the next NGO, so that not only have we supported them, we are not even leaving them at the end high and dry. In a very phased manner, we go out, maybe give them, if there's a 2-year rollover every time, give a notice 2 years in advance. And if they're able to get other donors, good. Otherwise, from our network, we should reference, because we know we are in a good position to see how the program has been going. And if I have run the program for 7 years, it will be easy for you to accept that, this is a good program and you should partner. So as corporates, we should help them out and, after funding, and then also not leaving them, but introducing them to somebody else.
Any more questions from the audience? Line. Just here, sorry. He had his hand up first. Can you just, can we have Linus's question first, if you don't mind? Sorry. He had his hand up first.
Hi, my question is to Beenoxi. Super impressed by due diligence process. I just wanted to know.
That's what it takes.
Yes, that's precisely. I'm from Deutsche. Just wanted to ask is how long did it take you all to put this process in place, and how much of resources within your 13-member team goes into monitoring and putting this due diligence in place?
When we started our foundation, it was in a small way, so we didn't have these systems, processes in so much detail then. It was in a small way. It is only after 2001 that 2011 that we moved into livelihoods, and another year after we moved into livelihoods, our livelihoods for large-scale projects to the tune of 20 crores, 25 crores per program. That's when we thought that the money are large, so we should have a system in place. And it took us about 1.5 years to have all of this in place. All this entire process did not come at a time. We started with 3 things initially. From the experience, from the impact, from the feedback, we added a few more. And as I told you, this year we've introduced another couple of things. So we are constantly reviewing, reducing some things, adding new things, changing some existing methods, and that's the way.
Great. And how do NGOs, react to such stringent due diligence process?
Yeah. So we do it in a phased manner. And plus, we don't make it very compulsory in the initial round, because it is difficult to expect that all of this will happen overnight or even over a period of 3 months or 6 months sometimes. We introduce it very gradually. When we introduce, we first take, we have rounds of discussions with them. We have open email conversations asking people what is their feedback. And like when we had the rating tool, when we decided on a rating tool, we opened that rating tool out to about 5-7 of our existing partners and took their feedback, incorporated their feedback into, our tool, because they would directly be affected by whatever is happening at our end. and then you have to give it time. So that's one lesson we learned, that we should not really expect too much too fast. It'll have to be gradual. The entire process will have to be very gradual. But at the same time, it needs to be there. For example, when we decided that we need 100% baseline. Now we have programs wherein we are reaching out to 60,000 participants, beneficiaries. We are in the process of taking 100% baseline from our partners. So it was not very easy initially to convince the need for the baseline. We could get it only with, over a period of 9 months to 12 months through all our programs. So today we have about 2,70,000 beneficiaries whose baseline data is fully recorded, and the baseline form itself could be 3 pages, 4 pages each. But that is over a period of time. Now how easy it makes is, you can do a lot of data analytics through that. You know where you're reaching, you can do course correction from your impact studies. You can do a lot of those things if you have the data. So there, it was that making them realize the importance of recording and is as important as implementing in the field. That is where, you have to continuously coach.
I'd just like to sort of give a different perspective to this and almost second what Ram and Aditi just said. Not all of us will have 150 crores or 200 crore budgets for CSR, and when Axis Bank is looking at projects, they are terribly large, and these systems you cannot do without. But not all of us need this kind of sophistication, and there are two methods. One is, obviously you have a certain set of criteria for due diligence that you undertake that doesn't take this kind of rigor, but there is a whole host of intelligence that is available in the community based on a lot of work that Dasra is doing, that Edelgive is doing, that DSP BlackRock is doing. All that data is available. MSDF has some phenomenal organizations. We work a lot with them and look at the organizations they funded, and then we have our own processes as well. But there is a certain intelligence that's available there that we really need to take advantage of, and not all of us can really afford this kind of rigor in terms of finding organizations.
Okay, just one more thing. How much time does it take within your team to, of your 13-member team, this process, how much resources do you apportion for this?
How much time? So we don't have silos wherein one team is doing programs and one team doing monitoring. We have a program manager concept, heads of different teams, and the program manager is like a relationship manager in our, like our banking industry. So he is in charge of the program. He has a limited of about 6-7 programs, and they will be doing the field work, they'll be doing enhancing the program, and they'll be doing the back office.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Similar kind of
Okay.
question.
Chetan.
Yeah, I'm Chetan from BNP Paribas. I agree with Vidya what she says in terms of the outlay which probably an Axis Bank would be following vis-a-vis an Edelgive or a DSP, because I think it's more promoter driven and the size also will matter. Ultimately it's about giving, and probably I think Dasra would also pitch in that the development impact will be quite longer period. So I think the thinking about exits and all those things might take some time, because we are at a very nascent style, and probably giving has just started. In fact, I feel there are some numbers with the UNICEF wherein the CSR part from organizations is much lesser than individuals. Individuals have a almost about 70 to 80% kind of people who give, and I think these CSR is just starting, and probably we are all getting into the mold of looking at a very organized kind of a setup. But I think it's all about coming from emotions and certain aspect. I don't know what is the outlay of Access Foundation as probably 200, 300 crores, and obviously you'll require a 13-member or 14-member team. Yeah. But all said and done, ultimately it's all about giving and where the objectives are going to be all the more same for everybody. It's ultimately seeing that the nation grows, and whichever way where you see pathetic standards, we want to bring up the standard of living. So I think it's all an individual perspective. Probably yours is a professional organization where you look I mean, a BNP or Deutsche would look at it from that angle, but maybe Edelgive would look at it from a promoter angle, or probably a Marico or a Ambuja Foundation. I think that's my view.
Yes, and for one last question, if there's one. Yep.
Hi, thank you so much for your inputs. My name is Shubham and I come from Credit Suisse. So my question basically for you is, for all three of you, you've been working in this space for quite a long time, right? And CSR has come like really new as a policy. How do you comply with that as a foundation and the CSR policy?
Do you mean from a... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, compliance is something that I think everybody is grappling with. It's not going to be easy, particularly because I disagree a little about the promoter bit, because I think we're all corporate foundations and we do have the corporate philosophy that's behind running it, and matching that with the 6 years or 10 years or 8 years of work with suddenly a framework with forms and annexures is definitely going to be a challenge. I think the good thing is a lot of us have been doing programmatic funding with a fair degree of clarity because of the due diligence that goes behind our funding, you know, in terms of beneficiaries, program definition, etc. So that professionalization is already there. This year, 2014-15 is going to be the test case, and based on what we've seen as of now, I don't think it is going to convert our work a little bit into bureaucracy, I think, but I don't think we're going to lose the ethos or the you know, sort of the culture behind it.
And also with Axis Bank Foundation, like now today you are 13-member team, but when you started you were small. So when we are talking about, you know, it's not necessary that we have to grow, or you know, we have to be a 13-member team. Like what was the vision to be at, you know, the stage where you are today?
Yeah, so vision to be what he spoke at the start, but the motivation behind the vision was to reach out to a large number of people. So we already had about, in our mission statement, that we will touch 1 million livelihoods, even when we had just thought that okay, we'll get into livelihoods. But that's from where we are. And secondly, to address this point, that it started small. For Axis Bank, it started small, wherein it was not compulsory.
Right.
There's a huge difference. So we could have donated 1%, we could not have donated 1%, we could have given just 0.5 or anything, it didn't matter. Now with larger companies, we don't have a choice. Your 2% might just, you know, happen to be 100 crores. So in that case, we don't get that much time to, you know, decide, okay, where we will have to start early.
But in this case, like CSR policy is giving you some kind of a breather with 5% of the cap of having, you know, capacity building and hiring people in that matter.
Yeah, so we should make use of that
right.
rider.
Ram, do you want to add on the compliance, please?
Yeah, I think I agree with Vidya. It's going to be more of creating form, because in substance I'm sure each one of us was genuinely into CSR activities much before it even became mandatory under company law. Obviously we had procedures, we had our own internal due diligence process, we had our own internal framework, guidelines and all of that. But yes, now that it has come on, it's become a part of law. Obviously we need to be in terms of our own internal internal documentation, like, you know, you need to have formal CSR committee of directors, and we never had. I mean, in our case, it was a CSR committee which was running the show, and of course with the guidance of the CEO and the chairman. But now you need to have a formal CSR committee of directors, which is again comprising of independent directors, and then you need to have enough and more documentation, basically, to make sure to show to the third party, that to auditors and to external people, you know, what you actually practice is actually well documented, because at the end of it, that is what is going to face the test of any audit. So it's more putting good form and good documentation into what you are actually doing, is what I think. So it's not really going to make too much of a difference.
Great. Well, with that, I'll just wrap up with the key points that we discussed. This panel is called Sharing Lessons Learned. So the key learnings really that, you know, these three panelists put forth, you know, one being around structured employee engagement. So really thinking through how do you want to meaningfully engage your employees, and have them contribute their skills and expertise to an NGO, learning from the last panel without that being a burden on the NGO itself. So managing that program as far as possible, within the company. Leveraging what's already out there. I think Ram put this across beautifully. He mentioned looking into research that existed, resources where you can easily, use those to figure out how to narrow down the scope of your CSR, what you can be supporting, etc., where to find the NGOs. Leveraging one another. I mean, at the end of the day, we all have the same sort of responsibility sitting in this room, towards the social sector, and it's not just from a place of compliance. So, collaborating with one another, sharing our due diligence, our NGOs, our partners, and so on. Thinking through the exit, whether that means networking and fundraising on behalf of our grantee partners, or just sort of opening up our own databases to each other. And then we heard about the need for sort of capacity building and taking those skills that NGOs don't necessarily have, enabling them to gain those skills and go to the next level, to really make meaningful use of our CSR funding. Thank you very much, all three of you. I hope we get to share some more experiences like these in the future. Thank you.